Hello, so today we will be talking about standardized testing. Um, we will address the standardized testing and its history in the state of Ohio, why it is not an authentic measure of student learning, the role of standardized testing in early childhood, and alternatives to standardized testing, followed by a list of references that were used. So it's standardized testing, according to one piece of information that I found, is a test with specific characteristics constructed to follow specific sets of statistical and psychometric guidelines that are described in the Standards for Education and Psychological Testing. Most of these tests are published and sold by commercial testing companies, and they come along with a manual that describes the specific procedures for administration, and it also recommends that any deviation from these standards may jeopardize the integrity of the test itself. Many of these tests have securities that no one can look at the test prior to or after its administration as well. And it uses a scoring system that compares the individual scores to the scores of specific population of people. There's two forms. There's the norm reference test, which compares a child's score to the average score of a population that test was designed for, like, for example, first graders. There's also the criterion reference test, which uses defined criterion for performance rather than average scores of a group. So it, like, for example, Cindy is partially proficient in language arts for the third grade. So these are some of the things that it measures and how it measures them. The history of standardized testing in Ohio is actually going back before it actually was implemented by the federal government. So the state of Ohio implemented its own tests in 1990 with the legislation enacted by the 118th General Assembly, which focused primarily on accountability for districts, and later it was expanded to schools. The first test was a ninth grade proficiency test in 5 subjects, which was the reading, writing, math, science, and citizenships. And these tests were also served as a condition for graduation. Now, in 2005, the No Child Left Behind Act was beginning to mandate testing under the federal government. So the State Board of Education of Ohio responded by adopting academic learning standards and developed new tests to go along, called the Ohio Achievement Assessments and the Ohio Graduation Test. Then the state also started setting standards for kindergartners with the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment of Literacy. And then in 2015, there was a teacher evaluation that was implemented called the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, which evaluated teachers based on the measures of the students' growth and performance. In 2015, the Ohio State test and end of course exams were adopted. And this was in response to a 2010 when Ohio adopted rigorous learning standards aimed to prepare children for higher education and the workforce, which paved the way for what's called the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness and for College and Careers. This was in 2015. This was administered to students in grades 3rd through 8th, and they spent 9 hours per assessment over 2 testing windows. This didn't go over very well, and then the General Assembly passed Bill 56, limiting state assessment to a single platform and test window, which required the state of Ohio to quickly terminate PARCC, the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, and they had to find alternative vendors and testing materials. So they, in response to that, they adopted what we know as the AIR tests, which are the American Institute of Research, as a vendor for all of its standardized testing requirements for English, language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. The AIR tests take between 2.5 to 3.5 hours per test, and they are administered in a single window. So that came, improved from the previous test, but it still didn't, it took much longer than the initial tests that were designed in 1990. Today, Ohio's testing looks like this. There's the kindergarten readiness assessment, the English language arts and math for grades 3rd through 8th, and then in grades 4 and 6, there's a social studies test. In grade 5 and 8, there's the science, and then high school, and of course exams are in algebra, geometry, English language arts 1 and 2, biology, American history, and American government. And of course in high school there's also the ACT or the SAT that the students can take. 17 of these 26 tests are used to comply with federal law. States also use to advance 2 critical policies in Ohio. The 3rd grade reading guarantee, which uses annual tests to monitor if students will be reading at 3rd grade level by the end of the school year and will learn on pace in higher grades. And also provided students who were not on track to receive additional support until they catch up. There's also what's called the condition for to be granted for a diploma, and the regulations for that were expectations for what knowledge and skill students have to demonstrate to graduate. And each of the 3 current diploma pathways includes results of 1 or more assessments. So like the ACT, the SAT, or the end of the course exams. The tests are administered by the schools, and they utilize vendor tests, must give tests multiple times during the school year. So they are either administered monthly or quarterly. Ohio current state tests take between 2.5 and 3.5 hours. And out of the estimated 12,367 school hours during the year in grades K through 12, 53.5 hours serve for Ohio's compliance with federal requirements. But that's not including the hours that are used to prepare students for these actual tests. These are actually just the test taking itself. So the reasons for standardized testing, they were to demonstrate the understanding of how well students are meeting Ohio learning standards. They are to provide information about the overall performance of the overall school system and individual district and school levels. They're used to comply, of course, with federal requirements of what students need to know and be able to do at each grade level. And they provide a uniform way to measure districts against a defined set of expectations, as well as they reveal trends in a particular teacher's instruction as she or he compares results of her or his class to another, and they find a need to modify instruction to improve results. So the data of these tests is used to see whether the system is providing students, teachers, school, and district the support they need to be successful. The subgroup data helps identify achievement gaps, which can be addressed with additional services and support to help students succeed. And state tests are used to support the state's accountability system. And the results of the tests are the foundation of Ohio school and district report cards, which show parents, taxpayers, and school leaders how well students are actually performing. Now, why are standardized testing not a good way to assess the authentic student learning? And believe it's outmoded theories of what and how children will learn. Many standardized tests are built on the idea that testing children on isolated elements or skills is the best indicator of a final performance. Current knowledge emphasizes that children actively construct knowledge, and skills tested in isolation may not be the best indicator of final performance. Test provides a partial picture of a child's performance. It doesn't give a full picture of what the child can actually do. Many tests and testing procedures are unfair to children who are poor from a racial or ethnic background, then middle-class majority, English language learners, divergent, creative thinkers, and others. English learners may have many times cannot understand the directions or questions in literacy tests. It is assumed that it takes them about 4 to 7 years for these children to acquire educational English that is used on these standardized tests. Young children, as we all know, have problem taking any kind of tests or paying attention. They have trouble with group administered paper and pencil types of tests because they are easily distracted. They are bored and made uneasy. And this is a one-shot testing is poorly suited for the way children grow. Children's learning process varies from child to child with, the times where they experience spurts where they're grasping all this information at once, and there's regressions. And these are things that are not taken into account by these tests. The role of standardized testing in early childhood is basically standardized testing of young children is not an accurate prediction of how well they will do in future tests. Children should be tested on both cognitive and non-cognitive skills development, and these tests do not do that. Children actively construct knowledge with social context that affects what and how they learn. They don't simply learn what is taught and reinforced, which standardized testing assumes that they still do. Children organize information, develop their own theories, make their own concept maps, and interconnections between facts and concepts. And testing should mirror these processes, active learning processes, to give a better evaluation of a child's development, not just, what they can get down on paper. The alternatives that I recommend for the standardized testing is the stealth assessment, which collect math and reading data. Major textbook publishers sell software to go along with the books which students are studying for, and they can register and answer questions about what they've just covered. And this would be a good way to eliminate time and cost and anxiety of stop and test, because this system actually passively connects the student knowledge over a period of a semester, school year, or the whole school year. It shows this, which skills students have mastered at a given moment, and it shows a pattern of answers that may provide insight of how quickly and how well students learn. Another alternative would be performance-based assessment, which includes projects, individual and group presentations, reports and papers, and portfolios of work collected. Projects similar to science fair and an additional add-on to the curriculum. It would provide portfolios which give a richer multidimensional picture of student capabilities than the test, standardized test. It allows students to follow their own interests and develop more on their strengths. It uses rubrics rather than percentile to grade work. And it addresses skills like teamwork, communication, and presentation that are common in the workplace. It also focuses on demonstrations of learning to outside evaluators, because students have to take their learning to the community and display their work to teachers and the community that they have not taught them. Another option would be frequent online low-stakes testing. So it is more testing with reduced stakes of each test. It provides a wider range of tests designed to serve a different purpose and administered frequently and regularly. It allows to recognize that area of difficulty more quickly and address the issue. A lot of times we don't get the results of standardized tests until months after they are actually given. And it provides immediate feedback to the teacher, and it reduces the teacher's overload, because students develop greater mastery and may become aware of power of quizzing and testing and use self-quizzing as a way to learn. And teachers can shorten the assessment cycle as computer system does the grading, and it frees up the time to work directly with students. So, and this is the list of references that I've used to demonstrate my points across this presentation. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you.